Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is llan and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host Jeremy. How are we?
I'm well, mate. How are you going?
I'm pretty good. It's a bit cold today, isn't it?
Oh, no, I'm all right. I'm warm-blooded.
You are warm-blooded. I'm not, clearly, because I'm in
You're in the
jeans, I'm in a
jeans,
jumper.
I'm in the shorts, mate.
I know,
It's all right. It's a bit of variety to the people watching.
It
It's
is.
good.
I love your hat. What can you tell everyone what's the logo there?
Yeah, well, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm wearing a hat. The brand is called Effing Rabbits, and it's a Japanese streetwear brand, and it's a little emblem of these two bunny rabbits having a bit of fun together. But I just think it's cute. I think it's a nice little hat. I think it's a cool design. It's a bit funky. It's a bit edgy.
I think it's evolution on your head. That's what it is, mate. But it's great. And
Always
it suits
coming
you.
back to the evolutionary side of things, are we?
Yeah, at least with me, I'm one of those.
Yeah. Anyways, mate, let's dive into this week's episode. Enough with the bullshit chitter chatter.
Sure.
Tell the listeners what we're talking about today.
Amazing. All right, so today we're going to be chatting about why being a nice guy is not what it's all cracked up to be. Going to be talking about why being a nice guy actually has more negatives than it does having its benefits, and why it's better to be a good guy. So let's start off with actually what is a nice guy. You would think, if I was to ask you, Jeremy, I'll just ask you now, what do you think a nice guy is, just from an instinctive basis?
Yeah, well, I think nice just meaning someone that has people-pleasing mentalities, kind of just wants to not threaten anyone, is kind of scared of confrontation, bit fearful of saying their own viewpoints if they think that it might, cause harm in the situation and get a response of disagreeability from other people. That's what I'd say nice guys are. What do you reckon?
Well, you're spot on there, because about 1.5 years ago, I read Dr. Robert Glover's book on how to stop being a nice guy. It's no more Mr. Nice Guy for anyone who's interested in reading the book. And he chats about this whole phenomenon in a lot of males, especially males that nowadays they grow up in an environment where they're scared to communicate their needs and their wants. So the idea here is that the problem with a nice guy is that it's someone who internalized from a very young age that they are not okay with who they are. They are not okay with their inside. So what do they do instead? They hide all the aspects of their life, of their personality. They're too scared to communicate their needs and wants because they're afraid and they're anxious that it's going to create a negative reaction from those around them. So the problem there is he doesn't live a life true to himself. He lives a sort of life where he does things where he can make other people happy. So as you said, there's a bit of people pleasing involved there, but there's no authenticity involved. And when someone's not authentic, there's a myriad of negative issues with that. They become way more deceitful. They're not honest. They don't say what they want. They don't stand up for what they want because in a way, they've relegated their own needs and wants to the bottom. Therefore, they prioritize everyone else's needs and wants above their own.
So you're not really actually being nice after all. I mean, yeah, you might be people-pleasing at the start to some others, and that might masquerade as being nice. But in essence, you're actually being a bad guy, aren't you? Because when things go to shit, potentially, and when your needs aren't met and when your boundaries are potentially crossed and nobody knows about these boundaries and therefore you react quite adversely to that, you're probably only going to cause harm to the people around you as well as to yourself.
That's certainly correct. And that's the thing here is that a lot of nice guys, they would have grown up in environments where they were too scared to communicate what they want. They were too scared to get their needs met because part of them are ashamed of who they are on the inside. And the problem is they give off this masquerade of going along to get along. And we all know that someone who just goes along to get along, it's usually conflated with someone who doesn't stand for anything at the same time as well.
I think if you're looking at it from like an outside perspective, say you're in a group scenario and you're trying to identify who is maybe a nice guy versus someone that is a bit more authentic, what do you reckon the traits are that can be quite easily observed in social settings?
Great question. From my perspective, I think at the very least, you don't see someone who's ever involved in any conflict. They're never stating their own opinion, even at risk of pissing everyone off.
And by conflict, we don't necessarily mean fighting.
No.
We just mean like back and forth conversation that might have different viewpoints, right?
As an example, it could be as simple as like, oh, I want to go for dinner tomorrow night at a Mexican place. and everyone goes along to get along, or rather this one person goes along to get along, but he doesn't want Mexican. He wants to go get Indian food, or he wants to go get, Chinese food, or so and so forth. But he's too scared to communicate what he wants. And look, it's fine. Majority rules in a group setting. We'll go for dinner where everyone wants to go. But that's usually the core of it. You'll never see this person stand up for what they believe in. And then at the same time as well, they'll let other people walk all over them.
Easily
swayed. And I think that it also comes from that low self-esteem.
Yeah.
When you've got a low self-esteem, you don't prioritize what you want. You don't believe in the value of your innate being enough to be like, I want this and I want that.
Yeah. And I think when I think about it, like in terms of a group setting, I mean, we're in a friendship group, big group of guys, all get along great. But if I think we actually take a lens where we look at ourselves from a third person perspective and, from the outside in, I feel like I've always had more respect for the people in the group that are not afraid to voice up what they truly feel in the situation. And even if it comes to things like dinners or activities, the ones that are actually delivering what they might want to do that might be contrary to the group, you actually have a little bit more of an ear to listen to them in that scenario versus someone that's just like, yeah, let's go along and let's all be pleasant and chilled and lovely and dovey about it. The ones that actually voice up and be like, actually not too sure, and then give rationale as to why, you're a little bit more intrigued to hear about what they say. Now, with that being said though, nobody likes someone that just causes shit and causes just unnecessary confusion in situations out of nowhere. So look, we're not advocating for people to be those purposely disagreeable people in the group, but what we are advocating is for people to stand up for the things that they might want to do, even if it does go against the group, because if there's good rationale behind it, people might actually listen to you and take an ear in what you're actually saying. And I think when it comes to that as well, following on, more maturity is kind of felt and experienced when you're also able to recognize, all right, is what I'm saying now like actually adding to this, or is it taking away from it? Because if it's taking away, if you respond in a way that's like, actually, you know what, even if my needs aren't met right now, I'm chilled because like I can understand the situation, people are going to have way more respect for you in that situation, even more so because like you're voicing up that you might not agree with what people are saying, but you're also saying, you know what, like my needs right now actually aren't that important. Like I can see where the group is coming from. So let's just follow through.
And I mean, as long as you're willing to stand up for those needs when necessary, it's fine. So the solution here to not be a nice guy isn't to be an asshole, as Robert Glover would say. He would say that it's actually on the same continuum in that you've got the asshole on one end.
Yeah.
But then you've got the nice guy on the other end of the continuum. But the problem there is that both are living a life that is inauthentic. The person who's being an asshole is doing it to get some sort of external validation from the world. Think about the people who treat, certain women like pieces of shit, and they present themselves as these really stoic types, these sort of hard exterior shells, the treat them mean, keep them keen sort of mentality.
Yeah.
Problem there is, just like a nice guy, they're doing it to get some sort of external validation. They're putting up a front. They're being dishonest. They're not living who they are. They're not living a life true to themselves, because what they're doing at the end of the day is incumbent on an external, some external sort of response. In this case, maybe getting a girl's interest, for example. And in the same token with a nice guy, if we're using like a girl as an example, they might never have the cojones to say to that person, I don't want to just be your friend. I want to show intent that I'm actually looking for something more serious with you. But all my behaviors and all my conversations that have led up to this point has made you believe that all I want from you is just a friendship. Because that, it's easy to go along and get along, right? But it's much scarier to actually say your intent and say, no, I actually see you in a romantic lens.
I think if you're also a guy that feels like you've got the tendencies to have these people pleasing, tendencies and traits, and look, I'll actually be the first to put up my hand and say, I used to feel like I was of that way, especially. Like I felt like, even now, people pleasing tendencies are something that I'm really actively trying to work on not doing anymore, because that was something that I feel like in the past, in my later teens, earlier 20s, I was doing. I was happy to just, go with the flow of the group, avoid confrontation, do what people, wanted to do, so that everything was happy, everything was pleasant. But now it's like I've actually, got more of the strength and courage to put my hand up and actually rebut things if, it's not how I want to be or what I want to do. And it's only done me good as well. I feel like you're more respected when you start actually acting that way, and you're swaying away from those people pleasing mentalities. So tendencies rather. So I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, I've been there. So what do you reckon you can do as a guy if you feel like you're of that nature?
Look, I want to get into the solutions, and we will talk about it shortly. But you've just mentioned to me that from a young age you were very averse to certain conflicts. You were happy to go along to get along.
Yeah.
I want to know two things, if you're happy to share on the potty. Number one, what do you think it was that made you so averse to standing up for what you wanted? Why would you prioritize going along to get along more than saying what you felt?
I think just the tendency to want to be liked, likable, just being a likable person. And I feel like I am a likable person naturally. So I think my type of mentality now towards it is like, well, if you don't like me for standing up for what I believe in, then so be it. I wouldn't want you to like me anyway if you have that reaction towards me standing up for what I believe in. But back then, in school and coming out of school, I didn't really have that maturity, that emotional maturity to recognize that. I didn't have the maturity to recognize that standing up for what you believe in is actually a blessing, not a curse. I thought, it's rather better to refrain from what you want to say if it means that it's going to maybe hurt someone's feelings. Sometimes hurting someone's feelings is very important if it means that you're standing by your true beliefs and your true values, assuming that you deliver it in the most amicable way you can. But people will have more respect for you by hearing your true intentions and hearing your true values. And therefore, one, you won't get walked over in future. And two, whether they like you or not, it doesn't really matter, because you wouldn't want to go to sleep at night knowing that you weren't acting in a way that is of accordance to what you truly do believe.
You know what's really interesting there? You had a tipping point, right? So there was definitely a point where beforehand you didn't probably place too much value on your needs, and you probably, whether you'd like to admit it or not, had more value placed on external validation. You wanted to be liked by people. That was something that, was quite important to you. Therefore, your behaviors and actions were done in such a way where you could protect that. You could still be liked, because you thought by expressing what you wanted, it would threaten that. It would threaten maybe potentially people's perception of you.
Yeah.
What clicked for you? Was there an incident where you're like, I should probably put myself first?
I don't think there was a particular incident, but I do think it was maybe of a time like around 19, 20 years old, where I've got a vast variety of different friends around me, but you start to reflect on your friendships and you start to recognize who are the truer friends and who are the ones that maybe have just been stringing you along a little bit for their benefit more so. And it hasn't been like mutually, not to say friendships need to be beneficial to, each other, but it wasn't like a mutual friendship. There wasn't mutual effort here. So I think I mainly just reflected on my friendships and reflected on the ones that, was I just putting in all the effort here, and was I, not getting much of a response for it? And recognizing that, I was quite active in recognizing that when thinking about my friendships, and I'd make the active effort to actually refrain from what I was doing, maybe refrain from putting in all of the effort into those friendships to see, is this being reciprocated, or is this person only reaching out to me when it's of convenience to them and when they feel like they're getting benefit out of me? And I think just looking at that firstly from your friendship circle and the people around you can then transfer into other areas of your life, so that you kind of just sift away all of the garbage. You sift away all of the people first that, aren't really adding value to your life anymore. And that's like probably the big factor for it. The big part of reflection are the relationships. And then when it comes to the smaller things, just like your conversation with people, the way in which you deliver your arguments, your viewpoints, you kind of take an approach where you're not as scared to maybe say what you truly believe in, because you've done it already in a bigger action in terms of friendships, which are a bigger action. So now when it just comes to conversation with people, which is what I would suggest is like smaller actions, you're even more courageous because you've done it on a bigger realm, on a bigger practice.
What about in relationships? Because I think especially when we're younger, it's a new field. It's a new thing you're trying to navigate. And being honest is sometimes a nerve-wracking thing. So, there's tons of miscommunication in early relationships. But I think now both of us, we're 24. And I imagine, especially with you're being single, but do you find that now one of the antidotes to being a nice guy is to practice radical honesty? And do you find that also translates not just within your friendship groups, but also in your dating life? Do you find that you're way more intentional, but you're also honest? You don't want to just say things to get along. You'll say things to vocalize what you want and what you need.
For sure. I think I've been vocal about this before as well, that like my earlier years of dating, I was happy with refraining from the hard conversations like a lot of people do. And a lot of people refrain from those harder conversations well into their 20s, maybe even their 30s. And
some don't even learn, to be honest.
And some don't learn. Why do they refrain? Because it's fucking hard. It's hard to have a hard heart-to-heart conversation with someone and outline your true intentions. But bloody oath, it's better when you do, because the clarity is there. Yes, in the moment, you might feel a little bit edgy. They might feel a little bit edgy. But that's where you recognize, you know what, like I'm actually not a people pleaser anymore. I don't really have those tendencies that I used to, because I'm not afraid to speak up for what my intentions are, regardless of what the other person's intentions are. I want to be true to myself. If they don't like it, that's okay. They don't have to like it. But I know that I can sleep well at night because I've been true to myself here, and they will respect that.
And you know where that starts from? That's actually saying, hey, my priorities and my needs are something I value. I'm not going to push them to the side for the sake of convenience, and also not push them to the side for not wanting to piss you off. And that's the thing. That's the antidote here, is what Robert Glover talks about, is that it takes a lot of years, a lot of therapy, a lot of work to get yourself out of that headspace. And the headspace that you want to be working towards is a place where you can practice radical honesty and know that even if there's a negative response, it doesn't actually matter. Because at the end of the day, you've prioritized your needs. You formulated your own boundaries at the same time as well, right? So you're telling people, hey, I've got a specific boundary here. It could be within a friendship. It could be within a workplace. It could be within a relationship. And the point of setting up that boundary, saying I've got a need here, and that if you cross this need, even though you might get pissed off if I end it, I'm still willing to uphold it. I'm still willing to uphold and maintain that boundary because it's something I hold dear. It's a need of mine. And we're all humans. We're all going to have needs. We're all going to have wants. If you all have needs and wants, the last thing you want to do is push it to the side. And the thing is, people can smell it through energy. People can feel it through energy. That when someone is not prioritizing their own needs, for example, in a relationship setting, you look at a lot of codependent relationships where one partner is always the emotional punching bag for the other partner, and they're always solving the problems of the other partner. What that partner is doing by pushing all their stuff to the side, they're being a nice guy, or they're maybe being a nice girl, especially if it's in a codependent relationship, because they're pretty much saying, my needs aren't as important as yours. Your needs are more important because you're probably more vocal about it. You're complaining more about it. You're more emotional about it. Therefore, who am I to complain about my needs? Maybe I'm just more stoic than you. Maybe I'm just good at keeping it to myself. But that leads down a really toxic relationship route of codependency. So I think the core tenet there is to understand that just because you might not be vocal about what your needs are doesn't actually devalue your needs in themselves. If you want love, if you want affection, that's a very valid need you have. You shouldn't keep that to yourself. You should be honest about it. So yes, number one, you start practicing radical honesty. And you get around friends, especially men, because I think a lot of men do suffer from this, is that they've never been in an environment where they can express themselves truly in an authentic way. They can't say shit without thinking, fuck, is it going to piss someone else off? So being around a group, and we spoke about this right before we got on the mics, which is a great antidote for someone who's a people pleaser, is to be around people who aren't people pleasers. And you gave a really good explanation why. Do you want to share it?
Yeah, because you pick up on their habits and you pick up on where you feel like your weaknesses might be as a human, as a man in this scenario. And by putting yourself around those people that maybe your weaknesses to them is a strength. It's a strength that they don't have those people-pleasing tendencies. It's a strength that they aren't afraid to voice their opinions. It's a strength that they act in ways that maybe, you wouldn't yourself act. But if you observe that from an outsider perspective and observe how that is received by others and how people respond to that, that also might help you in realizing, you know what? Nothing is actually all that bad at the end of the day, and no one actually really does give a shit about you to the extent that you think they do. No one cares about you more than you care about yourself. And that's the harsh reality. And I think it's quite a liberating thought, actually, because it means that, you know what? Act how you want to act within reason. Say what you want to say within reason, because people will actually respect you more for it. And if they still, at the end of the day, don't like what you said, don't like how you acted, but you know it was with one, true integrity, and two, according to your moral compass, you can't be pissed off with yourself because you know that you have done everything you would do as your own human. You can sleep easy and rest easy knowing that you haven't hurt anyone's feelings intentionally. All you've simply done is acted according to your moral compass. And if that hurts someone's feelings at the end of the day, honestly, it's just tough luck, isn't it? And that's on them, not on you.
And guess what? You attract like-minded individuals as well. You nailed the point there about respect, because again, no one respects someone who's deceitful, but people do respect someone who's willing to say things even at risk of pissing people off.
And no one respects someone that is completely agreeable with everything and is just a walkover as well.
No, and the thing is, look, I'll be the first one to say it. I think most experience that sort of feeling. It's like you want to go along to get along. It's just easier sometimes. It's more convenient. It's comfortable. So why?
Especially when it comes to relationships and dating,
Sure.
Because you don't want to upset your partner.
And the one thing I think I've gotten really good at in, my current relationship is being way more radically honest. Whereas maybe in my, my past relationships, I've been a bit more, let's just go along to get along. And now it's like, you see the respect you can garner from your partner by just saying what you want. And that's, it's the antidote. It's just being radically honest about everything. Because the truth of the matter is, when you know someone for a while, especially in a dating context, they know when you're bullshitting.
Yeah, they pick up on body and they pick up on energy, like you said. And with this as well, I think another liberating point is that we are human. And at the end of the day, you will fuck up still. You will make mistakes. And you know what? There will be times where you will go against what you truly would do in certain scenarios. You might say that thing that might have been out of line. You might act in a way that was out of line. You're human. It's going to happen. But respect will still be there for you if you recognize where you were out of line and you actually take ownership and accountability for that. Because it's too easy and too often for people to lie, and to lie so much where they actually start to believe their own lies and they sweep things under the rug and they don't account for what they say and how they do. And people pick up on that energy, and that's where you actually get a bad name for yourself. That's where people really disrespect you and don't want to be around you. But if you recognize the times where you have screwed up and you've messed up, you're outspoken about that, you apologize to the person if it actually has affected them, and you do it with integrity, yeah, it might have hurt their feelings and it might not make things all the more better in that instance, but they will respect you for being honest and being accountable for what you've done.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're saying what you mean and you mean what you say. And the truth of the matter here is that you want to progress from a nice guy to a good guy. And a good guy, as I said at the very start of the show, is someone who's authentic, who lives a life true to themselves. They're respectful to themselves, but they value their own needs and they're not willing to shy away from standing up for their own needs.
Exactly. So I think before we wrap up, if we just nail the key things as to what you can do from a solution lens, if you want to improve these people pleasing tendencies, if you want to start becoming more of a good guy, not a nice guy, let's reel them off. I think the first one being, connect with other men that you see strength in. Connect with those people around you that you see those areas that you might want to work on personally. And also start working on your own boundaries. Recognize what you truly value and what you want to uphold, and start recognizing that and actively working on that, whether it be through your relationships or just through conversation with people.
Yep. And I think, the whole thing there about honesty. Honesty. It really does set you free because, you're being authentic.
Absolutely. On that note, guys, we hope you've enjoyed this week's episode all about being a nice guy, and rather learning how to unlearn to be a nice guy, and start being a good guy. So if you've taken things away from this that you've enjoyed and that you feel like speak to you, let us know. Chuck us a like, chuck us a follow. Feel free to hit us with a nice rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you enjoy. It's all those little things that also do help us get this heard in the ears of other people as well, which will hopefully help them as well along their journeys. So feel free to do that, do all your sharing. We greatly appreciate it.
Love you guys. Have a lovely and happy Tuesday.
Bye for now.